The action of this dystopian novel takes place in the fictional world state. It is the year 632 of the Ford era, the era of stability. Ford, who founded the world's largest car company at the beginning of the 20th century, is revered in the world state as a godlike figure, referred to as our Ford. Technocracy rules this state. Children are not born here. Fertilized eggs are artificially cultivated in special incubators. They are grown under different conditions, resulting in different individuals: alphas, betas, gammas, deltas, and epsilons. Alphas are considered the highest class, engaged in intellectual work, while epsilons are the lowest caste, capable only of monotonous physical labor. Infants are raised differently, with each caste instilled with respect for higher castes and contempt for the lower ones. Each caste wears specific colored uniforms, such as alphas in gray, gammas in green, and epsilons in black. Standardization of society is paramount in the world state. Community, identity, stability is the planet's motto. In this world, everything is subordinated to the convenience of civilization. Truths are implanted into children's minds while they sleep, recorded in their subconscious. When adults face any problem, they immediately recall some salvational recipe memorized in infancy. This world lives in the present, forgetting about the history of humanity. History is bunk. Emotions, passions, these are things that can only hinder a person. In the pre-Fordian world, everyone had parents, a paternal home, but it brought people nothing but unnecessary suffering. And now, everyone belongs to everyone else. Why love? Why experience emotions and dramas? Therefore, children are accustomed to erotic games from a very young age and are taught to see the opposite sex as partners for pleasure. There is no art here, only entertainment industry. Synthetic music, electronic golf, feelies, movies with a primitive plot, where you genuinely feel what is happening on the screen. And if your mood somehow deteriorates, it's easily fixed with just 1 or 2 grams of soma, a light drug that immediately calms and cheers you up. Bernard Marx is a representative of the upper class, an alpha plus. However, he differs from his peers. He is excessively thoughtful, melancholic, even romantic. He is frail and dislikes sports. Rumors circulate that alcohol was accidentally injected into his incubator instead of blood substitute, making him turn out so peculiar. Linnaina Crown is a beta girl. She is pretty, slim, and sexy. People call such individuals pneumatic. Bernard is pleasant to her, although much of his behavior is incomprehensible to her. For example, she finds it amusing that he gets embarrassed when she discusses their plans for the upcoming entertaining trip in the presence of others. However, she really wants to go with him to New Mexico, to the reserve, especially since obtaining permission to enter there is not so simple. Bernard and Linnaina head to the reserve, where wild people live as humanity did before the Ford era. They have not tasted the benefits of civilization. They are born to real parents, love, suffer, and hope. In the Indian settlement of Malpais, Bernard and Linnaina encounter a strange savage. He looks unlike other Indians, is fair-haired, and speaks English, albeit in some ancient form. Later, it is revealed that in the reserve, John found a book, which turned out to be a volume of Shakespeare, and memorized it almost by heart. It turns out that many years ago, a young man named Thomas and a girl named Linda went on a tour of the reserve. A storm began. Thomas managed to return to the civilized world, but the girl was not found, and they assumed she perished. However, the girl survived and ended up in the Indian village. There, she gave birth to a child, and she was already pregnant in the civilized world. That's why she didn't want to go back, as there is no shame greater than becoming a mother. In the village, she developed a fondness for mezcal, Indian liquor, because she didn't have soma, which helps forget all problems. Bernard decides to bring John and Linda into the world state. Linda evokes disgust and horror in everyone, while John, or the savage as they start calling him, becomes a fashionable curiosity. Bernard is tasked with introducing the savage to the benefits of civilization, which do not impress him. He constantly quotes Shakespeare, who talks about more marvelous things. However, he falls in love with Linnaina and sees her as a beautiful Juliet. Linnaina is flattered by the savage's attention, but she can't understand why. When she suggests engaging in Fordian sharing, he becomes furious and calls her a harlot. The savage decides to defy civilization after seeing Linda dying in the hospital. For him, It's a tragedy, but in the civilized world, death is treated calmly, as a natural physiological process. After Linda's death, the savage goes to the soma distribution point and passionately urges everyone to reject the drug that clouds their minds. Barely managing to prevent a panic, they induce pairs to take soma. The savage, Bernard, and his friend Helmholtz are summoned to one of the 10 world controllers, his Ford ship Mustafa Mond. He explains to the savage that in the New World, they sacrificed art, genuine science, and passions to create a stable and prosperous society. Mustafa Mond tells the story of his own youth, how he was too enamored with science, and was given a choice between exile to a distant island, where they send all dissenters, and the position of world controller. He chose the latter and stood in defense of stability and order, even though he fully understands what he serves. "I do not want comfort," replies the savage. "I want God, poetry, real danger. I want freedom, and goodness, and sin." Mustafa offers exile to Helmholtz as well, adding that the most interesting people in the world gather on the islands, those dissatisfied with orthodoxy, those with independent views. The savage also asks for exile, but Mustafa Mond does not allow it, explaining that he wants to continue the experiment. And then the savage leaves the civilized world on his own. He decides to settle in an old abandoned lighthouse. With his last money, he buys the essentials, blankets, matches, nails, seeds, and intends to live far from the world, growing his own bread and praying. But one day, someone passing by accidentally sees the semi-naked savage passionately whipping himself on the hillside. Once again, a crowd of curious onlookers gathers, for whom the savage is only an amusing and incomprehensible creature. "We want a show! We want a show!" the crowd chants. And then the savage, noticing Linaina in the crowd, shouts, "Harlot," and attacks her with the whip. The next day, a young London couple arrives at the lighthouse, but upon entering, they see that the savage has hanged himself. And, as always, if you enjoyed this summary, don't forget to like and subscribe for more literary explorations. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you in the next video. Happy reading!